Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. Now, you might have noticed straight away that we are in a completely different environment. There's not the usual green screen backing behind me. What's going on? Well, I'm on the road. Currently, I'm in Australia. So all those who are hankering for the green screen action, I will be back next week. And I'll be back home, so it will return then. In the meantime, you're just going to have to get used to looking at a different backdrop for the next couple of episodes. On the way over on the plane, on the flight over, I got to see the movie Suffragette, and I actually really enjoyed it. It's probably one of the best character arcs I've seen in a movie in a long time. These days, the whole art of storytelling seems to have broken down a bit, and it's hard to find a film where a main protagonist actually goes on a journey and the character changes dramatically. So there's actually a really pronounced character arc. And it was really great to see that in a film. I really enjoyed that. It was really, and it formed a big sort of central part of the storytelling in this film, and it was done so well. It was really great. It's beautifully shot, really well acted, of course, because some big name, very good actors in there, and I think there's definitely some Oscar-worthy performances in there. However, it wasn't all plain sailing, and there were a couple of things that I found a bit frustrating about the film. First of all, if you didn't know anything about this particular period of history and the suffragette movement, particularly in England, you could easily be forgiven for walking away from this film for wrongly believing that all suffragettes and the entire suffragette movement was about engaging in acts of violent civil disobedience. In fact, it wasn't. Yes, Emile Pankhurst and her group did plant bombs. They did engage in acts of sabotage and other acts of destruction of public property. But there were other groups within the suffragette movement who didn't do those things and were actually opposed to those kind of activities. And the movie doesn't really explain that very well or unpack that aspect of it. And I think that's important because that particular issue really, I think, lies at the heart of the story. And there's a very important question. It's actually two questions that I think this film could have explored, and it completely skirted around them. The first question is, were their actions ethically justified? What they were doing moral? Could you give moral justification to acts of destruction? Effectively, I think they are acts of domestic terrorism that they engaged in. So the question is, was that justified? Now, the film really doesn't explore that question. And secondly, because it doesn't portray the wider movement and it doesn't give a good sense to the view of how big this movement was and how this was only part of it, it doesn't ask the other important question, which was, were their activities effective or were they strategically detrimental to the suffragette movement? Because at the time, a lot of people, including suffragettes and others who were within the movement who disagreed with those actions, they were saying this is not strategically good, it's actually doing harm to our cause. And there's a lot of good evidence to back that up. However, there is a debate there, and this movie unfortunately skirts around that, and it creates an impression of that particular period of history which I think is a little bit misleading and might lead people to wrongly assume things were a different way to how they actually were. So by all means, watch the film. It's a good film. It's an enjoyable movie, but I would have to say to you that I would highly recommend doing a bit more reading around the suffragette movement in England and understanding a bit more deeper the real history that the film, it doesn't fudge it, but it just doesn't go into it enough to give you a proper explanation and context for the events that you're actually seeing unfold on the screen in front of you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.